The huge furry monster reared up as if to strike. Well over 7 feet tall, its immensely broad body made it seem squat and lumpy. It had the huge hands of a gorilla, the savage yellow fangs and fierce red eyes of a grizzly bear. There was no fear in the face of the white-bearded old man who stood looking up at it, just a yearning curiosity. He knew the monster wouldn't move. It had stood like this in the private museum for over 40 years, ever since he had brought it back from Tibet. He reached up and opened a flap in the monster's chest. Beneath was an empty space just large enough to hold a small sphere. The door opened and 2 people walked in. One was a tall, elegant, white-haired old man, the other an attractive young girl. The man pointed to the brooding figure at the end of the hall.
"There he is, Miss Travers. Now please you take him away."
Although his voice was cultured, it held traces of a Middle European accent. Anne Travers was used to apologizing for the eccentricities of her father.
"I'll do my best, Mr. Julius."
She smiled and crossed over to her father.
"Hello, Father."
Professor Travers looked round in mild surprise.
"Oh, hello, Anne. Thought you were in America."
Anne Travers sighed. "I was in America until you cabled saying you were in trouble. You were supposed to meet me at the airport."
"I was? I thought I'd better come here and have another go at Julius. The silly old fool won't listen to me."
The museum owner marched angrily over to them.
"Me, a fool? You would like me to be a fool, Professor Travers, fool enough to give you back my Yeti. You must give it back, at least for a time. Don't you understand? The thing is dangerous."
Julius flung out one hand in a dramatic gesture.
40 years it stands in my museum. Now he tells me it is dangerous. But Julius is not so easily tricked.
The 2 old men glared angrily at each other. Travers, shabby and unkempt with tangled hair and bushy beard. Julius, tall and elegant in his beautifully cut suit. Anne sighed again. She glanced at the placard at the feet of the rearing monster. It read, "Life-size model of the Yeti, commonly known as the Abominable Snowman, brought back from Tibet by Mr. Edward Travers after his expedition of 1935. It had all happened long before Anne Travers was born. Edward Travers, with his friend and colleague Angus Mackay, had gone in search of the Abominable Snowman, the legendary man-beast, rumoured to haunt the snowy passes of Tibet. Months later, Travers had returned alone. Mackay had been killed on the expedition. Travers had told a wild story of faked abominable snowmen, robot servants of some alien intelligence that planned to take over the world. The plot had been foiled by a mysterious being known only as the Doctor. Travers had brought back a strange collection of objects in support of his story. They included the massive creature that now stood in the museum and a small silver sphere that he claimed had once controlled the creature and given it life. Travers had been unable to prove his claims. The sphere remained silent, the Yeti refused to stir, and everyone assumed Travers, unbalanced by his sufferings in Tibet, was attempting an elaborate fraud. Although no one believed the story, it had created a considerable stir. As a result, Emil Julius, a wealthy and eccentric collector with his own private museum, had offered to buy the Yeti for a handsome sum. Dejected, discredited, almost penniless, Travers accepted the offer, an action he was to regret for the rest of his life. Although he sold the Yeti itself, Travers kept the silver sphere which controlled it, together with a number of other Yeti relics. Determined to justify himself to the world, he had begun to examine the sphere with the aim of discovering its secrets. With incredible determination, he had embarked upon the study of the still-new science of electronics.